Good evening, middle school. Welcome back. Don't forget there is a worksheet that goes with this lesson on our church webpage. All you got to do is go to our church webpage there at www.oldunioncoc.com and go to the youth page, and you'll find this lesson, and nearby it you'll find a Word document that has our worksheet and some puzzles for you to do. We're going to be in Genesis 25 tonight. Genesis 25. We're going to be talking again about two brothers. Have you noticed Genesis so far in our study? You have Cain and Abel. We didn't talk a lot about it, but you have Ishmael and Isaac. And now we're going to have two brothers, Jacob and Esau. We seem to see some themes here, don't we, in this book? I'm not sure I had noticed those themes before. And we still have brotherly conflict to come. So, Genesis 25, let's catch up. We looked at Abraham and his promise. God gives him a son, Isaac. It took a long time for that to be fulfilled. Then God asked him to do something strange. Remember last week when he asked him to sacrifice his son, and God provided. God just wanted to know that Abraham was with him. It also sets up a story in the Old Testament that God will later do in the New Testament. We talked about the idea of the sacrifice of a son. Well, Isaac has gotten married, and now his wife is with child. And the Bible makes a very interesting statement here. It says, even when they were in the womb, they wrestled with each other. Now, I know we've been in quarantine a while, right? Well, these two twins, the first twins in the Bible, Jacob and Esau, are going to be in quarantine. They're going to be stuck together, right, in the womb for 9 months. And it says that they were wrestling even in the womb. The mother makes a comment about that. Well, they are eventually born. And what happens here is the oldest is supposed to receive what's called a birthright. I want to spend a few minutes explaining what this is before we get into the lesson. A birthright was something that the oldest son got. It was a blessing. It was an extra portion of the inheritance so that when the family was ready to transition, the father could give out the family blessings, and those were usually material goods, right? But the oldest son got an extra portion so that he could continue to take care of the father and the mother, or maybe just the mother, depending on how things had worked out. Let me do some math with you for a moment. Let's say that I have 3 sons. All right. I know in our story today we only have 2, but I have 3 sons. I'm going to take all that I have. I'm going to take the number of sons I have, 3, and I'm going to add 1 to it. So you see that I have divided. I know it's math. Here we are in quarantine. I'm making you do math. I'm going to take 100% of my estate and now divide it by 4. So I have 4 groups of 25%, right? Well, each son is going to get 25%. And then the oldest son is going to get the extra 25%. So in this case, he winds up with 50%. Now the math doesn't always work that way. So that oldest son will continue to take care of the parent. That was a big deal, all right? That was a very big deal. It was something they were looking forward to, that was a responsibility. You may have a parent taking care of a parent right now. Or maybe one day you'll be that child taking care of a parent. Well, that was the birthright. Now, this was something that had been set aside in their culture so that there was basically a social security network. That's what they might have looked at it. Again, it was a double portion to that son. You then became, when you got it, the head of the family. Even though your father might still be alive or your mother might still be alive, you were now in charge, so it was a lot of responsibility. You also were responsible for keeping your family in a relationship with God, which meant you had to live your life in a way that God could continue to bless. Remember, Abraham's seed was going to go on and was going to be blessed, so you've got to live that life. And you would continue to keep that promise alive because, remember, Jesus is going to come. If you need to go back to our Abraham lessons and remind yourself of that, you're more than welcome to do that. So, here are our cast of characters for tonight, right? These are real people, real biblical times. This is Esau. When Esau is born, He is called by how he is described at his birth. And he is described at his birth as red and hairy. So that's Esau. That's how he gets his name. His brother is Jacob. Jacob means he who grasps the heel. All right. Remember, people are often named by something that happened maybe at their birth. We've seen already God has given people names. God has changed names. Have you noticed that in our story? Maybe you want to ask your parents, hey, you got your name. We've talked about this several times before. Maybe you haven't had that conversation. So Esau, red and hairy. Jacob, he who grasped the heel. As the babies were being born, he was holding on to his brother. And Esau is the firstborn. He is going to get the birthright just because he was born first. That's how it works. But then as they grow older and they both find different things that they like, Esau becomes very much an outdoorsman, likes the great outdoors and the animals. Jacob kind of likes staying around the camp a little bit more and likes to learn to cook and some of those things. Well, that plays into the story. So will you join me in Genesis 25 as we look at the story? In Genesis 25, beginning verse 29. Now Jacob cooked a stew, so they're older now in the story. And Esau came in from the field, and he was weary. And Esau said to Jacob, please feed me with the same red stew, for I am weary. I think it's interesting that the stew is red, because what does Esau's name mean? Yeah, red and hairy, right? Red. Hopefully the stew wasn't hairy. That's just gross. For I am weary. Therefore his name was called Edom. But Jacob said, sell me your birthright as of this day. Jacob says, if you're so hungry and you think you're about to die, then I tell you what, I want the birthright. Now remember, that was something way far in the future that he was going to get. It wasn't something he had. He didn't even know how much it was going to be. Maybe you have been promised something in the future and you traded it off. Let's say that your parents gave you a box and they said, hey, you can't open this box until you're 24 years old. And you're thinking, man, that is forever. And I came up to you and I said, I'll tell you what, I'll buy whatever's in that box for $200. And you're thinking, I know my parents, they probably don't have a whole lot, or they probably didn't give me I'll sell it. I'll get so I give you $200. Well, when I open the box, it's a gold bar worth thousands of dollars. You say, oh no. Well, that's kind of what's about to happen here. He's selling himself short. That's what's he's about to trade all that he's going to have one day for a bowl of stew right now. And that's where this lesson comes from. Get back in the lesson with me. And Esau said, look, I'm about to die. So what is the birthright to me? You think this box when I'm 24, I may not even remember where that box is. Yeah, I'll take whatever now. Then Jacob said, swear to me as of this day. So he swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. Now, he didn't really have that wasn't something he could just give away. You can't give away the birth order. Some of you have several people in your family. Some of you are the only child in your family. We've talked about this in class. You can't just mix up the order and say, oh, well, no, I've decided I want to be the middle child now, right? Well, that's kind of what has happened here legally. So Jacob has said one day, when it's all said and done and Dad calls us in, I get that extra portion. Now remember, let's go back to our lesson. There were two brothers. So how would it be divided? That's right, into 3 parts. So in that case, Jacob would walk away with 66.6% of the stuff. Let's see what happens in the story. So let's look at some visuals. Let's make it fun tonight, right? Here's Jacob cooking a bowl of stew. Esau comes in, and what does he say? Oh, I'm tired, and, I just want to get it done quick. Maybe you'll be in the situation one day where you just rather have something over instead of really put time and effort into it. And so they have the conversation there, I'm famished, and he says, I'll tell you what, you give me the inheritance. Maybe that's a word you know better than birthright. And he says, look, what I need that inheritance for? And he says, okay, swear to me that you'll give it to me, and I'll give you a bowl of soup. That's what he's promising here. So Esau sits down and he has some stew, right? Well, that's kind of interesting because I think it says a lot about our appetites. What if I told you I'd give you all a piece of candy right now? And some of you would say, oh, that's awesome. Or if you'll wait 3 weeks, I'll give you 5 pieces of candy. Oh, hmm. Well, I'm hungry right now. I I kind of would like it would be nice to have some candy right now. I can get my own candy in a few weeks. Well, what is your appetite? What do you crave? Maybe since you've been in quarantine, you've been craving something from a restaurant that's not open, right? Or maybe that you're looking forward to when this is over, to going somewhere with your family, eating at your favorite place. Maybe your mom hasn't been able to get something at the grocery store. So what's your appetite, right? Well, appetites cause us to want things and to do things and to desire things, right? Um, it gets on your mind and you're thinking, oh man, I just can't get that off my mind. Well, that's kind of what's going. He walks in, he's hungry, he's weary, he smells the food, and he says, man, that's what I want. Well, what are some of the appetites you face? Well, what are some things that kind of you want, and then you do things to get them, and then you desire these things? Maybe they're not food. Maybe they are. Maybe they're acceptance. Maybe back when we were all in school, you did a lot of things for your friends to accept you. Maybe you chose to be the class clown because you wanted the class to like you. It may have disrupted the teacher. It may have even disrupted someone, but you just wanted to be accepted. Or maybe you talked about somebody else bad in the class because everybody else didn't like them. And so you did it too to be accepted. Maybe you wanted to be affirmed. Now, this is a word you probably have not used a whole lot. Affirmation means we want people to say you did a good job, right? Maybe you took credit for something that wasn't yours. Maybe you stole someone else's work. Imagine that one of you painted a beautiful picture and I said, oh, can I see that? And I signed my name at the bottom. And I quickly ran out and showed people this painting. And they said, oh, you did such a good, because I wanted that affirmation. It wasn't my work. It wasn't mine. Maybe it's just stuff. Maybe you've realized you have a lot of stuff. Maybe some of you have played with some games or found some things in your closet that you had even forgotten you had, right? But you thought, man, if I just had that, if I could just have that one more watch or one more piece of jewelry or another piece of clothes or another set of tennis shoes, I'd be happy. Or maybe it's being right. Maybe you just like to dig your heels in and you're going to be right no matter what. And you'll go and do research on something just to prove you're right. Now, you won't do any homework. And you won't do but boy, if there's a little fact on a test that you think is wrong, you're going to spend hours trying to prove you're right. Or maybe, do you have an appetite for peace? Do any of you just want things to be okay and so you're willing to just not say anything? Because you don't want to upset the cart or the boat, whatever phrase we want to use there. And maybe people are even doing things that are not godlike. But you don't really want to speak up because, then they're going to talk, they're going to wonder about you. And so you're just going to let the peace happen. These are all times that we kind of sell out. Is that a term, to sell out? Where you say you believe in something or something is important to you, but really it's probably not that important to you. Well, that's what happened here with Esau. He was going to get a birthright, but maybe it wasn't that important to him. So, the common word for all appetites is really more, right? How many of us have been at a family meal and we ate a lot of stuff. It's Thanksgiving, it's Christmas. We said, whew, I'll never eat again. It's been a long time since Thanksgiving. I've eaten. How about you? Right? Or, oh, I'll never, it's just more. That appetite, right? It comes back, right? It's only fulfilled for a short period of time. Well, appetites have the potential to control us, right? If we don't control them. And I'm not just talking about food. Don't get lost on the food metaphor here. It can be something like, I want that thing so bad, I'll be willing to do anything to get it. To steal, to cheat, to lie. These are godly characteristics. So, Esau had a great family. I want you to look at that. He had a brother, he had a mom, he had a dad. They had some possessions. He had things coming to him. His life was good. He even had a future. He even knew that he was getting a birthright. It wasn't going to be a surprise. Maybe what you don't also realize is he misses out on this. Later in the story, God is going to tell people about him. And he's going to tell people about those that have followed him. I've jumped way ahead in the story. I know, just hang with me a minute. In Exodus, he says, moreover, he said, I am the God of your father. He's talking to the children of Israel. I am the God of your father. The God of Abraham, we studied him. The God of Isaac, yeah. And the God of Jacob. You know whose name could have been there had he kept the birthright? Esau. Esau's name would have been in that blank. You ever think God tried to do something with you and you kind of blew him off? Or you kind of said, I'll let somebody else do that. Or you were too interested in something else, you were distracted. When we look at the genealogy of Jesus, in Matthew, look again at that line that's underlined there. Jacob. That could have been Esau. Jesus could have come from Esau's line had he not sold out the birthright. I wonder if any of us are selling things out. Well, that's not where the story stops. The story goes on, and I'm going to paraphrase. You know what a paraphrase is, right? I'm not going to read it word for word out of the Bible. I'd like you to. I'd like you to have some Bible time this week and read the story. But later in the story, it is time for Isaac to give away the birthright. He's getting old. His health is not good. And he knows it's time for him to pass it on. Well, he doesn't know that this has happened, remember. This is between Jacob and Esau. So he calls Esau in and he says, I want you to go prepare some food for me. I want you to go out and do this before I die. Now, it doesn't mean he's going to die right away. It's just that he wants to have that special moment with his firstborn and give him the birthright. And so Esau is called in, and that's what happens here. Well, that's not the only person that heard it. The mother heard it. And for whatever reason, she knew the story. She knew that Esau had sold the blessing. And so she goes and finds Jacob. Now, we haven't talked about her. Her name is Rebecca. There was a lesson I missed in this series where Isaac and Rebecca is brought to him as a wife. It was just a story that I thought it was more important we spend a little more time on Abraham. You may have spent time on that in an earlier time or in a later time. Maybe we'll go back and visit that. Very interesting. But here she is. She's heard this story. She goes to Jacob and says, it's time for the birthright. And I know that you bought it from him. She's really meddling where she doesn't belong. And she's actually going to encourage one of her children to lie. This isn't an easy story. We like to think Bible stories, everybody makes the right decisions. But they're real people. And we're real people. And sometimes we don't make the right decisions. So let us learn from this. So she says, look, it's going to happen. It's time for the birthright. I'm going to tell you what to do, Jacob. And so she basically says, go out and get one of your young goats, right? Get 2 of them. And what we're going to do is take that meat and we're going to cook it because I know what your dad likes, right? I've been cooking for him for years. And we need to save the wool from those goats because I got a plan for that too because you're not like your brother. So let's see how this goes. So what do? Well, they go out. And Jacob says, but Mom, I don't feel like my brother. I'm not red. I'm not hairy. Now, it had mentioned earlier that Isaac's eyesight was failing, that he couldn't see very well. Or we'll see that in the story, I should say. And so if I go in there, Dad's gonna know. If you go into your parents know your voice. They know what you look like. You can't pretend to be one of your siblings, right? Well, that's what the mother's asking him to do. And she says, I got a plan. So she says, hey, if something goes wrong, that's on me. Go get the goats. So what does Jacob do? Well, he does what his mother tells him. And so he goes out and he kills 2 young goats. Well, they bring them back. They cook them up. Now remember, Esau is out hunting. He's an outdoors guy. He knows none of this is going on. Isaac knows none of this is going on. And then they take the fur from the goats and they cover Jacob with it and they bring the food. So when Jacob comes into Isaac and Isaac doesn't see real well, he's going to have that animal smell like he's been out in the woods, right? And his dad, if he reaches out and touches him, is going to feel a lot of hair. And sure enough, here's the food. Surely it must be Esau. You see, this isn't a great story in some ways, is it? that they're tricking their husband, their father. So he goes in and he even asks, which son are you? He's like, the voice doesn't match, right? And he says, and he lies. He says, I'm Esau, your firstborn. I've done what you told me. Now sit up and let's eat this. I came to get the blessing. And he says, how did you get that so quick? How did you go? And again, he says, God caused it to happen. Again, the lies just keep coming. Have you ever noticed that? Have you ever noticed that sometimes you have to tell another lie to cover the first lie, to cover the next lie? He says, come close. I want to touch you and see if you're really Esau. And so he comes close. But he's going to smell like goats, right? Like wild animals. He's going to be able to reach out and touch him. He's going to be all furry. And he says, but your voice, that's just throwing me a little bit, right? He says, are you really? I am. He keeps the lie going because he wants the birthright. So the father eats, and then he gives the blessing. He gives the blessing, and he gives it to Jacob instead of Esau, not the oldest son. Now, this was not his doing, remember. He didn't know the deal they had. So he gives him, he blesses him, and he says, may God give you abundance. May great things happen to you. You will be the continuation of this family. He says nations will come from you. Remember, Abraham had been promised, and now he has Isaac, and we looked at that. And he said, those that curse you are going to be cursed. Those that bless you are going to be blessed. That sounds very much like what Abraham was told by God. And it looks like Abraham gave that to Isaac, and now Isaac is giving that to his, it's not his oldest son, but to Jacob. Well, after all that all happened, guess who showed up? Esau. That's right. Esau's back from the field. And Esau cooked the food, and he walks right in, not knowing any of this has happened. Now remember, Isaac doesn't know any of this has really happened either. He thinks everything's gone according to the way he planned. Well, Esau walks in and says, ta-da, I'm here. I'm here for the blessing. And he says, who are you? And he's like, Dad, come on, Dad, it's me, right? It's Esau, your firstborn. And he says, then who was that brought me the water? I already did this, right? Am I losing my mind? I already did this. And Esau says, no. It's me, Dad. You've got to bless me. And he says, I've already given the blessing out. Your brother used deceit. And that's true. Jacob deceived his parent. I shouldn't say parents. The other one's in on it, right? Later, that's going to come back to haunt him. Later, Jacob is going to be deceived. And he's going to find out it's not so nice. And he says, I already gave it. I can only give it once. And I gave it to your brother. Now remember, Esau had sold this birthright a while back when he thought, I'll never need that. I don't even know what that's about. It was a fair deal, I guess. But now all of a sudden it was important to Esau. What is your relationship with God? Is it important? Is it important to you now, or do you think that's something you'll have later in life? Well, you need to think about that because a relationship with God is a long term, I hope, for many of you. Now, there will be those who come to know Jesus later in their life, and it will be a shorter, but for those of you who know, it's a long-term relationship. And God is making us promises that later in that relationship that some of us are trading right now for bowls of stew. Well, how do you think Esau now feels? He says, what's going to happen to me? How's this going to, what's going to go on? And so he basically says, I'm going to go get Jacob. Now, there's an interesting second part to this story. We're not covering it in this series. But maybe as a part of your Bible study, when you go back and actually read this from the passage, right? Later on, in several chapters, Jacob and Esau do meet again. Do you want to know what happens? It's fascinating. There's a lot of detail. There's a lot of interesting things. They go their separate ways, as you might imagine. As a matter of fact, Jacob can't even stay with the blessing. He has to leave. But he and Esau do later meet, and they have a very unique conversation. I hope you'll look for that later. Maybe you're an adult watching this. So, selling out for a bowl of stew. Well, we often give up our future for something right now. That's what sin is. Sin is right now. Sin is not something that is going to last forever. It is a temporary thing. God is a forever. Eternity is forever. Heaven is forever. I'm broadcasting from my house. It's not going to be here forever. Now, it's been here for almost 100 years, but it's not going to be here forever. But heaven is forever. Your relationship with God. The person who was your best friend in first grade, you may not even know who they are. Some things just aren't forever. But God says, I want to be your forever. When Esau had heard these words of his father, he cried with an exceedingly great and bitter cry and said to his father, bless me also, oh my father. What did I do? Can I? No. God tells us on Judgment Day, there are going to be people who say, Lord, Lord, I did all these things. And he's going to say, I don't know who you are. You're not one of my children. You didn't do what was necessary when you had the chance. And Esau said, I'm about to die. Remember what he said? What's this birth? Remember those words had to come back and haunt him. Remember on that day he had sold out for a bowl of stew. So, maybe we need to think about our appetites for just a moment. Maybe we need to think about them. We need to reframe them. Here's what the scripture says. Let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith. Where are we supposed to be looking? Not for a birthright, although those that are Christians have been born again, but not to inherit something here, right? Let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross. You think Jesus said, hey, the cross, no. It hurt. He was in a body. He bled. He was mocked. Remember, he even goes to the garden and he says, is there another way? But the thing that kept him on the cross and kept him going was he knew what was coming next. He didn't sell out. I think of the Matthew 5 passage. Let's blow it up and make it a little larger. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. So are you hungry for something? Are you hungry for righteousness? Are you hungry for something that will fill you temporarily? Many years ago, I had a youth group at a church, and we did an experiment. And one Wednesday night or one Sunday, I don't remember what it was, we did this lesson. And I gave all of them a 50-cent piece. Now, that's kind of different, right? It's not a quarter. It's not a dollar. It stands out in your change. And I asked them to carry it for a week. And I said, every time you kind of take that out of your pants pocket and you put it in another pocket, just think about God. Think about your relationship with God. Ask the girls to do the same things. I said, as maybe you're looking around your purse or put it somewhere where you're going to see it every day. And I want you for a whole week, every time you see that 50-cent piece, I want you to think about God. Well, we met a week later. And I asked the class, how many of you have your 50-cent piece? And several of them pulled it out of their pockets. Some of the girls got out of their purse. Some of them, it was way down in there. I don't know if they'd seen it a whole lot during the week. And one kid said, I don't have mine anymore. And I said, why don't you have yours? And he goes, I was in the store and I really wanted some gum. He spent his God on gum. Now, money's not our God, but do you understand the point? He wanted the gum instead of the reminder of God. And that was a great lesson for us as a class. We talked about that. I wonder if any of us have ever sold God out for gum. You say, I don't even like gum. That's not what I'm talking about. Have we ever lied so we wouldn't get in trouble? Or to be accepted? Or have we ever said words that we know we're not supposed to say because we thought it'd make us cool? Have we ever fought so hard to be right that we ended up losing a relationship and a friendship here on the earth? Many times we trade something for God. And that's what an idol is. It's anything we put before God. So, Maybe this lesson has made you hungry. Maybe right now you want to go get some soup, right? I'd encourage you on a spiritual level, don't trade your blessing for a bowl of soup. You think Esau ever got hungry again? Yeah. You think he ever regretted his decision? Well, read later in the story and you'll see what happens when he and Jacob meet again. Well, that's our lesson for tonight. What are you hungry for? Are you hungering and thirsting for righteousness? You've got some downtime to spend time in the Word. I hope you'll do that. Well, it's been a great week with everybody. I've enjoyed it once again. Still miss you guys. I know I say that every week, but it's true. It's no fun being in a room by myself doing this lesson. I like when you guys are there to ask the question. Have you got a question? Have your parents text me or private message me, and maybe I'll cover that. I hope everybody is safe. Wash your hands. Keep your heart clean. And guys, have a blessed week until we can be together again.